Okay. Crazy day, snow day. Classes are very, very short. So instead of doing anything, we're going to talk about you don't even have the handout. All you got to do is watch the video or not. I don't, you know. They don't pay attention. Why should you watch the video, right? Okay. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend anyone. Okay. All right. Here we go. We're going to talk about FDR, though. So enjoy as much as you can. All right. Here we go. If you have questions, comments, raise your hands. I'd love to hear your point of view on all of this stuff. All right. FDR was the 32nd president of the United States. Okay. Anybody know what number is Mr. Biden right now?
46.
46. Yeah. Okay. All right. He served as president from 1933 to 1945. If you notice, that's a little bit longer.
That's 3 terms.
That's 3 terms. Okay. And he actually won a 4th term, but he died before he could be sworn in. This is when after his time, this is when they make it so a president can only serve 2 terms. Okay, because it really was not. It wasn't illegal for presidents to serve. George Washington, if you remember, Adam, I said raise your hand. You got a comment. I just start talking. George Washington actually served 2 terms and could have served more. But he said, no, 8 years is enough. So he steps down to allow someone else. Otherwise, you have a king, okay, or a dictator or something of that nature, and that's not what you want, okay? All right, so he had a number of vice presidents. He had John Gardner, Henry Wallace, and, of course, Harry S. Truman, who becomes president after he passes away. He was 51 years old when he first got elected, okay? He grew up in Hyde Park, New York. That's where he was born. He passed away. He was actually living in Georgia. He married Eleanor Roosevelt, and they had a number of kids, or not a number. They had what was it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 children. One of them passed away as a child. He is most known for leading the United States and the Allied powers against the Axis powers of Germany and Japan during World War II. He also led the country during the Great Depression and instituted the New Deal, which included programs such as Social Security and the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the FDIC. That is where the government insures your money that is in the bank. Social Security, of course, is what your parents and you, well, I don't know if you ever will or not. It might be gone and they have a whole different plan by the time you guys go to work. But the idea is they take out a percentage, whatever how much money you make, they take out a percentage. It used to be like 7.5% of your paycheck. And then your employer had to pay 7.5%. So 15% of your paycheck went into a retirement account for you every month. Okay? And basically, the money I started paying in when I was 18 years old up until, still, it actually, we're back again, they're not taking my money and putting it in a box with my name on it. Everything I pay in and my employer has paid in over all these years actually are supporting people that are already retired. And the idea is you guys will come along and get fantastic paying jobs and probably go, I want to give more money because Mr. Sizemore is going to be retired and I want him to have a really, really good life, so I want to give more money towards Mr. Sizemore. That's not how it works. But what you pay into Social Security, if it's still around by the time you guys get there, will actually be supporting people that are already retired. And that's kind of the idea behind it. Okay. Again, there will be something in place, but it might not be Social Security as we know it.
It's going to be anti-Social Security.
It might be. He was elected president to 4 terms. We talked about that. That's 2 more than any other president has ever served. Again, he didn't serve 4, he served 3, and he passed away before he could take office on the 4th one. He grew up in a wealthy family. He was very influential. His family was well known, very rich, a New York family. He was tutored at home, and he traveled the world with his family when he was young. He graduated from Harvard in 1904. He married his distant cousin. Okay, now, yeah, stop. You've just offended everyone who lives in Alabama, whether or not you know it. It's West Virginia, son. It's not Alabama. Okay, quit. All right.
I bet the kids have like
stop.
5 legs.
All right. That's just a bad joke. All right, listen. A distant cousin could be, that doesn't mean like your first cousin or second or even third. Once you get past third cousin, it's almost, you don't even count them as cousins anymore. I get these things all the time from Ancestry.com, like, oh,
So
we found someone, that's kin to you, and it's like 8th cousin, twice removed, and I'm like, okay, no. Yeah, I don't know these people. Okay, so a distant cousin is on down the line. Okay, it's not like he married his first cousin or something. Yes.
Wasn't his father Teddy Roosevelt?
No. Well, he was kin to Teddy, but no, it was not his father. Okay.
Teddy Roosevelt.
Roosevelt became active in politics in 1910 when he was elected to the New York State Senate. He was later the Assistant Secretary of the Navy. However, his career stopped for a while in 1921 when he became sick with polio.
That's probably from his cousin.
Although he survived, no, polio is a virus,
Yeah,
okay? Although he survived his bout with polio, he nearly lost the use of his legs, and for the rest of his life, he could only walk a few short steps by himself. Now, he was very proud, and he thought that if the American people saw him in his wheelchair all the time, that they would think of him as weak. And he did not want people to think of him as weak like that. So he would not allow the press to take pictures of him in his wheelchair. When they would have dinners and things like that at the White House, he would already be seated at the table when the guests came. We'll watch, in World War II, we'll watch a film of him giving the speech asking Congress to declare war on Japan and all.
Wait, when he said December 7th,
But he was already standing at the podium, okay? So he could stand with the help of being able to hold on to the podium and things like that. He could stand long enough to give speeches and things. But he could not easily get up out of a wheelchair and go walking off or anything like that. Yes?
Underneath the hotel,
Stop. I've called on one person.
underneath the hotel we used to stay at, like there was a secret elevator that could take him up to his room. Like he could drive his car.
Yeah,
from
it was a
train
very
into the
secret.
elevator.
Yep. But the whole idea was he didn't want the American people to think for a moment he was weak and lose confidence in his abilities. Okay? His wife, Eleanor, told her husband not to give up, so despite his condition, he continued with both his law and his political career. In 1929, he was elected governor of New York, and after serving 2 terms as governor, he decided to run for president in 1932. In 1932, the country was in the midst of the Great Depression, okay? And people were looking for some ideas, leadership, and hope. Because the bottom had fallen out of everybody's world. They were discouraged. A lot of people had lost everything. They were unemployed. The meals they got was coming from soup kitchens. Things of that nature. They've lost everything. So they elected Franklin Roosevelt hoping that he had the answers. Okay? When Roosevelt entered office as president, the first thing he did was to sign a number of new bills into law in an effort to fight the Great Depression. And these new laws included programs such as Social Security to help retirees, the FDIC to help secure bank deposits. He had work programs such as the Civil Conservation Corps, the CCC. His administration becomes known as the Alphabet Administration because everything was referred to in its letters, okay?
Transfers.
They had, you started new power plants, aids for farmers, laws to improve working conditions. He established the SEC, which is the Security and Exchange Commission. Okay, and that's to help with stock market, so that you can't do the inside trading. They put laws into place to supposedly to help protect the people that invest in stocks and things of that nature. Okay? So all of these programs together were called the New Deal. And in his first 100 days of being president, he signed 14 new laws or new bills into law. Okay, and of course in 1940, Roosevelt was elected to his third term as president. Now World War II is already going on. Now, we're not involved in it yet, but it is going on in Europe. Okay, and around. World War II had broken out in Europe, and Roosevelt promised that he would do what he could to keep the U.S. out of the war. Okay, sounds familiar?
Yeah.
Wilson did the same thing, if you remember World War I. Yeah, Woodrow Wilson said he got elected on the promise to keep the United States out of the war.
European.
Okay?
No, he failed.
So Roosevelt gets elected to a third term on the basically a promise that he would do everything he could to keep the United States out.
He said everything he could.
Everything he could. But
He didn't say he
here's the deal. Well, but here's the deal. On December 7th, 1941, Japan bombs the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor.
Hey, why'd you do that? Just
You kind of got to respond to that, okay? I don't care. You might be anti-war, but you can't just roll over and let that go. So Roosevelt had no choice but declare war.
But
Okay?
they sent like a 13-page ultimatum that didn't even arrive in time to tell them, like, oh wait, we're gonna kill a bunch of guys.
We'll talk about that when we hit World War II. Okay. Roosevelt worked closely with the Allied powers to help fight back against Germany and Japan. He partnered with Winston Churchill of Great Britain, as well as Joseph Stalin of the Soviet Union. Now, Stalin was a piece of work, and we'll talk about him when we hit World War II. You want to talk about, excuse me, people, but Stalin was quite a piece of work. He was, in all reality, he was as bad as Hitler. He wasn't trying to take over the world, but he killed a bunch of his own countrymen and stuff for disagreeing with him. I mean, he was a dictator. Roy Yell. Okay. He also laid the groundwork for future peace by coming up with the concept of the United Nations, which was came off of the League of Nations that Wilson started. Okay.
And then it comes to the NATO in
Okay.
1939, right?
As the war was coming to an end, Roosevelt's health begins to fail. He was posing for a portrait when he had a fatal stroke. Okay? His last words were, "I have a terrible headache." And then he passed away. So Roosevelt is considered by many to be one of the greatest presidents of the history of the United States. He is remembered at the National Memorial in Washington, D.C. You'll go up, when you all get to go to D.C. in 8th grade, I'm assuming, or maybe 7th grade, depending on whether or not you're going to beach trip this year. You will see the monument to him. Now, not everybody thinks he was the greatest president of all time. Some people think that he destroyed the country because of all these socialist plans that he put into place. So it's kind of, you need to do your own reading and try to figure out, guys, I am talking, I am not going to listen to you. Okay? Back again, they think if they're not going to be tested on it, then it's wasted knowledge. How sad is that? Is that not sad?
What if he makes a pop
Okay.
quiz?
Yes.
Where are you staying? Like, where would we stay?
In D.C.,
Sure, it's not.
on the street, we want you to get the full effect of what it's like to live in D.C.
Oh yeah, we're gonna stay outside of Station 10. It's fine.
Are we staying at the
Uh,
White House?
We're not talking about a D.C. trip.
Everybody else.
Good Lord, Brad.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're talking right now, the door's right there. Goodbye. That's amazing. No one was talking. Y'all didn't hear it, did you? I didn't. I know. Okay. All right. President Theodore Roosevelt was his fifth cousin, and he was actually an uncle to Eleanor. He met President Grover Cleveland when he was 5 years old, and Cleveland told him that I am making a wish for you. It is that you may never become president of the United States, because being president is hard. Okay, it's not an easy job.
That's why everybody looks old when they come out of office.
Yeah, absolutely. After Roosevelt's presidency, a law was made that allowed presidents to serve a maximum of 2 years. Okay? Prior to Roosevelt, the previous presidents had followed George Washington's example of serving only 2 years. He was the first president to appear on television during the 1939 broadcast from the World Fair. Understand, not everybody had TVs back in those days. There was a very, very select few. But he did start what they called a fireside chat, where he would come on the radio every week and would give the American people an update on how the country was doing, and once the war started, what was going on in the war, things like that. Okay? Again, knowledge. Why do you need it? Why do you need it? Right? And one of his most famous quotes was, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself." Teddy Roosevelt's most famous quote was, "Walk softly and carry a big stick."
Unless you have a dinosaur.
Okay.
Run dinosaur.
All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that just a little bit.